Hello, my name is Michael Dent, or is it? When I was the captain of the university's second 11 football team, I was known as Mick Dent. Then I went to London Business School and I was known as Mike Dent. When I moved to Latin America, they called me Miguel. When I worked in Brussels, they called me Michelle, which caused a lot of consternation to some of my British friends. The reason I'm here today is to talk to you about the problems of branding. And not just branding for any old product or service, but branding for probably the most important product on the planet. And that product is you. So deciding on your own brand name and what you want to be known by. My thesis is that this is something that many academics don't spend enough time or attention on, and the impact can be that you lose credits for conferences, publications, you confuse your students, and you confuse your work colleagues. And when you move institutions or even worse, countries, then the complexity increases even further. So firstly, just a little bit about myself. This is my own work that I've conducted over the course of the last 30 years. I've worked in a variety of different countries, working for a number of MNCs. And one of the biggest problems I've come across is something called the indeterminacy of language. And this refers to brand names, strap lines, even mission statements. I was told when I was in Beijing that a mission statement written in Mandarin could sound very over the top to American ears, but in Chinese itself, or Mandarin, it makes perfect sense. This is a big problem when we start talking about marketing teams which are international and conversing with your own advertising agency, which again might be in another country. And this also impacts on the name that academics first choose to use. And again, my thesis is the name you first choose to use is very difficult to change subsequently. All the theory tells us that a brand name is one of those aspects in the marketing mix which you will never change. You might change the pack design, you might change the price, you might change the distribution channels, but you aren't going to change the brand name. Now, one classic example is Mars and Snickers. Some of you may remember this hugely expensive exercise when Marathon in the UK decided that it was more cost effective to change their brand name to Snickers to be in line with the rest of the continent. But it caused a lot of consternation, confused a lot of customers, and even this year, 2020, they brought out a sort of nostalgic marathon version of the old pack just to sort of revitalise consumer interest in the Countline bar. So for an academic, leaping into publication without thinking of what your name should be can make for a lot of problems. So this is relevant to you if you're a Malaysian or a non-Malaysian working or thinking of moving to Malaysia. Now, the number of factors to consider. The first one is where are you now? And where will you be in 10 years' time? I always thought I'd be living and working in the UK until the day I die. And the next thing I knew, I was in Brussels, and the next thing I knew, I was in Miami, and the next thing I knew, I was back in Brussels, and then the next thing I knew, I was back in London, and then I was in Kuala Lumpur. So it's difficult to tell. The other problem is that the company you're working for, the culture there can change quite significantly as well. I always thought I'd be working for an organisation which was primarily British based and orientated. But to my surprise, one organisation I was working for got taken over by the German post office, Deutsche Post. And the German way of working, as you all know, is completely different, particularly when it comes to respect, giving people their correct name and title, and not being overly familiar in an office situation. So I think the mistake that many people make is that they use the name that's on their passport. And there's absolutely no necessity to use the name that's on your passport at all. You're perfectly at liberty to use any name you want within reason. And the thing that's probably interesting to many of you is that publishers don't actually care what name you use. So you can use any name you wish as your pen name. So the next thing you've got to think about is your current name likely to be difficult to understand? And the answer to that is probably yes. I was in a building this morning, and my name was called out, and they said Dr. Michael Murray, which is not my name. My name is Michael Dent, as I said earlier. But being Malaysian, they looked at the middle name and assumed that was obviously part of my name, and call me Michael Murray. The only person that actually knows my middle name is Murray is probably my mother, my sister, and my wife, and that's about it. I don't reveal my Scottish clan middle name to anybody except in extremis. Other thing you've got to think about is changing your name. Are you likely to be changing your name because of marriage? And this does not only apply to the ladies in the audience. Quite frequently, men will change the name to that of their partner, whether they be male or female. If you're Malaysian Chinese, you might have an adopted name or a nickname, and you might want to include that. So if you've got a name like Stefan Germanotta, is that the name you'd use on stage? Lady Gaga, by the way. Norma Waterson, anybody know what her stage name was? Marilyn Monroe. Natalie Hirschlag, that is of course Natalie Portman. So moving on, unfortunate names. Now, this is an example in Ghana. I'm not sure that I'd want to risk drinking this particular drink, but I'm sure it's very safe. It goes by the unfortunate name of pea cola, which apparently in Ghanaian is quite acceptable. Some of you in the audience might be from Vietnam, and you might recognise the letter D there, and it's got a funny mark through the middle. And this was a student of mine in Vietnam, and her name was Miss Zung, pronounced Zung, Z-U-N-G, but spelt with a D with a slash mark through it. And she was hoping to go and study in the UK. And I said, well, I think you might want to change your name because Dung won't go down very well in the UK. She was horrified. She said, that is my name. That is the name I'm going to keep. I'm very proud of my name, and I have absolutely no intention of changing it ever. And she was absolutely adamant. I spoke to her 6 months later, after she'd arrived in the UK, and asked her how things were going. And she said, well, Michael, actually, we're right. I've decided I can't use the name Zung, and I've now decided to use another name. Next example is a colleague of mine that I met a while ago that was a keynote speaker at a very high-profile event in the United States. And he was greatly amused, actually, to find that when he got there, he had his photograph and a big string of his title and publications and expertise and what have you, but his name had been posted as Professor Bin. So pretty unfortunate. Now, this one might make some of my Malaysian friends chuckle. This was my father-in-law's idea. He decided to open up an agency in Jakarta in Indonesia, and lovely thought, he decided to name the company after his 4 eldest children, Amira, Walid, Al and Salha. So he called it Awas. And he was very perturbed when he discovered that people were not only not coming into his shop, they were also deviating past it. Awas, as we all know in Malaysia, means beware or danger. So the scope for unfortunate names or making a mistake is actually quite high. And when you're doing any research on launching a new product, it's obviously key that you consider the brand name you've chosen and its international acceptability. And it always amazes me how few companies actually do that. Right, I'm sorry I'm not here in person. I would like to have heard comments or questions from the audience on both my paper, which goes into a lot more academic detail, but also on this short presentation which I've been asked to prepare. So let's just wrap up with a conclusion. So my first point is that you should choose your name with great care, because once you've chosen it, you don't want to have to change it in any way, shape or form. Some while ago, I met a colleague of mine from Lancaster University in the UK, and I greeted him, good morning, Sue Kwok, how are you today? And he was very confused, and the reason was because he'd changed his business card to reflect the British convention, which is with the family name or the surname to the end. So in the UK, he was known as Kwok Tong Sue, but in Malaysia, he was known as Sue Kwok Tong. Things get slightly more confusing because apparently his brother has an almost identical name, Sue Kwok and something else. So don't automatically default to your passport name. Of course, this doesn't apply if you're catching an aeroplane. So my supervisor at Sunway University told me some time ago that he was denied a flight to Hong Kong because he hadn't given his name correctly as it was on his passport, and on the booking form online he wasn't actually asked for the full Malaysian name, which is Muhammad Nazari bin Ismail. Now, if you're a Westerner, a Marsalo or a Guilo like myself, never ever give your middle name to any Malaysian unless it's in an airport or it's absolutely unavoidable, because the minute you do that, you'll create all sorts of confusion and life will start to get very complicated for you. Again, I well remember turning up very late at night in a hotel in Singapore and asking for my room, and they said, what's your name? And I said, Michael Dent. And they said, I'm sorry, we don't have a reservation in that name. And of course, lo and behold, they had the name given to them by my secretary, and she had very kindly booked the name in their understanding under the name of Mr. Murray. So I hope you find that useful. Very important in terms of branding. We're actually going through a similar exercise at Sunway University, which is where I teach, and we're looking at what would be the best name for some of our programs and even our department. And we want something which is dynamic, which has got a bit of Industry 4.0 in it, and which gives students and parents the confidence that the subject of marketing is something which will still exist in 20 years' time, and will see their child in a job which has some reasonable longevity to it. So again, hope you found that interesting. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in person one of these days post COVID-19. Thank you very much.